Ahead of the general elections next April, President Yoon replaces the nation's finance minister with his former senior secretary for economic affairs, Choi Sang-mok, and names 5 others to key cabinet posts, mostly in charge of the economy. South Korea's third test launch of a solid-fuel space rocket is successful, this time carrying a commercial satellite and putting it into orbit. We take a look at what this means for the nation's reconnaissance capability. Over in the Middle East, Israeli ground forces are now pushing into southern Gaza, fueling concerns over more civilian sacrifices. It's December 4th, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon. We begin with a partial cabinet reshuffle with the general election in Korea just 4 months away. Today, President Yoon announced 6 new names for key cabinet posts, mostly in charge of the economy. His shakeup focused on scholars and female ministers. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
President Yoon has nominated people for 6 out of 19 ministerial positions. The anticipated announcement came on Monday after the presidential office started major reshuffles last week. The upcoming general election next April is forcing current ministers who are looking to run for the National Assembly to resign their posts by January 11th, the cutoff date under Public Official Election Act. For Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Economy and Finance, the former Senior Secretary to the President for Economic Affairs, Choi Sang-mok, has been nominated to replace Chu Kyung-ho, a 2-term lawmaker who is seeking a 3rd. Choi worked closely with the presidential office and has been a big part of the Yoon administration's economic policies so far.
The nomination comes when there are unfavorable economic conditions at home and abroad. So I feel a great sense of responsibility facing the long road ahead.
The other nominations were also for ministerial posts having a direct impact on the country's economy. Former Korea Land and Housing Corporation CEO Park Sang-woo has been nominated as Infrastructure Minister, while Kang Do-hyung has been put forward to head the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. To lead the SMEs and Startup Ministry, Oh Young-ju, who most recently served as Second Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, has been nominated. Kang Jung-hae, a former president of Sookmyung Women's University, has been nominated as Minister of Patriots and Veterans Affairs, and Song Mi-ryung is looking to head the Ministry of Agriculture. It's also noteworthy that the nominations announced on Monday are all scholars and experts in their fields with no direct political experience, with the general elections coming up in April. In fact, the majority of the incumbents were already politicians when they were nominated. This is a trend likely to continue with more nominations yet to come. Justice Minister Han Dong-un is also being closely watched by the public. While he is a key man in the Yoon administration and a close confidant to the president, he could also be seeking to debut in politics. In addition, the Foreign Affairs Minister Park Jin is under scrutiny about his potential moves. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Amid an intensifying space race with the North, South Korea this afternoon successfully conducted its 3rd test flight of a solid-fuel space rocket, this time carrying an actual satellite and putting it into orbit. Correspondent Eun-ji explains what this means when it comes to responding to North Korea's evolving threats.
A rocket blasts off into space from a barge floating in waters south of Jeju Island. At around 2 p.m. on Monday, South Korea launched a solid-fuel space rocket, the 3rd test of its kind following 2 others in March and December last year. Unlike the first 2 tests, which carried dummy payloads, Monday's test involved an actual satellite, developed by the country's defense electronics company Hanwha Systems. South Korea's defense ministry said the rocket placed a small satellite that weighs about 100 kilograms into orbit, at an altitude of about 650 kilometers, saying the country has taken a step closer to securing an independent space capability to put satellites into low Earth orbit. It also said the successful launch would accelerate the country's surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities, at a time when North Korea continues to threaten national security by launching a military spy satellite, violating UN Security Council resolutions. Monday's launch tested the 1st, 3rd, and 4th stages of the rocket, ahead of the country's plan to conduct a full-fledged launch in 2025. The rocket, currently being developed by the state-run Agency for Defense Development, uses solid fuel for the first 3 stages and liquid fuel for the 4th. Solid fuel rockets are easier to store and handle and are cheaper to launch than liquid fuel ones. Although liquid fuel rockets are more expensive and difficult to store, they're capable of carrying heavier payloads. An official from the Defense Ministry explained that South Korea will be able to launch satellites weighing 500 to 700 kilograms once all 4 stages are developed. The official also explained that South Korea's solid fuel rocket technology is one of the best in the world, and that it can generate thrust force 1.5 times higher than that of rockets developed by North Korea. Amid growing nuclear missile threats, South Korea aims to send a total of 5 reconnaissance satellites into space by 2025 to better monitor North Korea. Poons, Arirang News.
In a follow-up to President Yoon's recent state visit to the UK, Seoul's Finance Ministry is seeking to launch consultative groups to ramp up cooperation on trade, clean energy, and technology. Shin Ha-young has more.
South Korea is seeking to further strengthen its economic ties with the United Kingdom. Measures to follow President Yoon Suk-yeol's visit to the UK last month were discussed during a ministerial meeting on Monday, presided over by Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho. Chu highlighted that the Downing Street Agreement, which was adopted during last month's state visit, has laid the groundwork for a leap in economic cooperation with the UK.
A total of 45 MOUs were signed in the economic sector, achieving tangible results such as announcing investment pledges, winning contracts, and gaining support from the UK government for the activities of our financial institutions in the London financial market.
As part of the efforts for follow measures, the government decided to mainly focus on 4 areas, including trade and investment, clean energy, science and technology, and development cooperation. In particular, starting in January next year, when discussions on improving the FTA between Seoul and London commence, the government will launch intergovernmental consultative groups. These groups will include financial dialogues and investment cooperation committees. In the clean energy sector, the government will initiate discussions with the UK to allow Korean institutions to participate in new nuclear projects. The 2 countries will also cooperate in technology areas such as chips, AI, digital tech, and space. Regarding development cooperation, there will be annual policy dialogues between the governments. Regarding the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, Chu mentioned an agreement to promote new investments worth $155 billion in the clean energy sector by 2030, adding that it will put its utmost effort into its swift implementation. The Finance Ministry also revealed plans to support reconstruction projects in war-torn Ukraine. He said short-term plans include contributing $100 million to the Multilateral Development Bank and providing $200 million in humanitarian aid. In the long run, it is planning to support by providing $2 billion through South Korea's Economic Development Cooperation Fund. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
In a ceremony celebrating the 60th anniversary of South Korea's Trade Day on Tuesday, Hyundai Motors will be receiving the biggest so-called Export Tower Award for 2023, the $30 billion Export Tower. This will be the first time in a decade for an automobile corporation to receive the best award, and Hyundai achieved its record by seeing a 30% jump in exports year-on-year. At the ceremony, over 1,700 companies will be receiving an Export Tower Award for setting a new trade milestone from July last year to June this year. Meanwhile, Samsung Electronics has received the biggest Export Tower Award 4 times over the past decade, receiving a $120 billion Export Tower in 2022. China has held off customs procedures for urea exports to South Korea, raising concerns of another supply shortage similar to the one in 2021. According to Korean government officials, the latest blockage has been made in consideration of strained urea supply within China and is not because of political issues. Officials here say there are low chances for supply disruptions as Seoul has secured urea imports from other countries that are enough to last for about 3 months. Urea is a chemical compound used for producing fertilizer and exhaust fluid in diesel cars, which Korean companies heavily rely on China. Online sales in South Korea have hit record highs on the back of increased travel. Statistics Korea says that online sales in October totaled a little over 20 trillion Korean won, or roughly 15 billion US dollars. That's nearly 12% higher than in the same month last year. This is the first time since data was first compiled that online shopping sales have surpassed 20 trillion won. Mobile shopping transactions took up more than 73% of the total, while the travel and transportation sector saw the highest increases in sales. Also on the local front, companies with fewer than 50 workers may be offered an additional 2-year grace period as authorities look to expand the scope of a workplace safety law that penalizes employers for severe industrial accidents. Shin Se-byuk explains.
Small companies may receive an additional 2-year grace period for a workplace safety law, which penalizes employers for severe industrial accidents, as the deadline approaches for firms with fewer than 50 employees. The decision was made during a consultative meeting of officials from the presidential office, the government, and the ruling People Power Party on Sunday, due to concerns over potential negative effects on small businesses.
Applying the laws indiscriminately could lead to closures of small and medium-sized businesses and subsequent job losses.
The government initially granted a grace period from the Serious Accidents Punishment Act until January 27, 2024, for companies with under 50 employees, acknowledging that about 80% of all serious accidents involve such firms. The act, which came into force in January 2022, imposes a minimum of 1 year in prison or fines up to 1 billion won, roughly $770,000, on business owners with 50 or more employees in cases of fatal on-duty disasters caused by inadequate workplace safety measures. Businesses with fewer than 5 employees remain exempt. To ensure the passage of the amendment by the end of this year, the ruling party stated that it would closely work with the main opposition Democratic Party. Last month, the Democratic Party of Korea took a conditionally supportive stance regarding the discussion on the 2-year grace period. The 3 conditions proposed by Democratic Party included an official apology from the government for the delay, concrete plans and financial support for workplace safety, and a firm commitment from economic organizations to enforce the act for all companies following the 2-year grace period. If passed, some 800,000 companies nationwide will be affected by the amendment. However, the legislative amendment is facing strong opposition from trade unions. The Federation of Korean Trade Unions said the grace period extension would expose workers to dangerous workplace conditions, while the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions is set to hold a rally on Tuesday. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Since fighting in Gaza has resumed after the ceasefire ended, Israeli forces have now expanded to the south. This is fueling concerns about more civilian sacrifices in the heavily crowded area. Lee Soo-jin tells us more.
The Israeli military is rapidly expanding its offensive to the heavily populated southern parts of the Gaza Strip, raising further concerns about civilian casualties. Israeli army spokesperson Daniel Hagari said in a press conference on Sunday that ground operations have been expanded.
The IDF continues to extend its ground operation against Hamas centers in all of the Gaza Strip. In all of the Gaza Strip, where there is a Hamas center, the IDF is operating. The forces are fighting face-to-face with terrorists and killing them.
Attacks from warplanes and artillery mainly targeted Han Yunis and Rafah, cities in the south of the enclave. The Israeli government said the military struck more than 400 targets over the weekend, which included extensive aerial attacks in the Han Yunis area.
We were sleeping safely and without a warning, we felt a shake. A shell fell over the area and all the houses around were affected, including ours. Lots of people were affected in the area.
These renewed attacks come after the end of a week-long pause in the fighting, during which there was an exchange of 105 hostages held by Hamas for 240 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Concerns over civilian death tolls are growing as the offensive moves south because around 70% of the Palestinian population in Gaza is in the southern area. The Israeli military on Sunday issued evacuation orders for several districts of Han Yunis, urging them to go west and south toward Rafah on the border with Egypt. Residents, however, said that these areas are also being targeted and they have been unable to find anywhere safe.
We can't see any safe areas, but we move because what can we do? We have children and all night they're shelling, so we move from area to area, but there's no safety anywhere in Gaza.
As of Sunday, Gaza's health ministry estimates that more than 15,500 Palestinians have been killed since October, many of them women and children. 이수진, Arirang News.
Powerful earthquakes struck the southern Philippines over the weekend and into this week, while a volcano in Indonesia erupted on Sunday. Chung Eun-ju has the latest.
A magnitude 6.9 earthquake struck off the coast of the southern Philippines on Monday morning, following a series of strong quakes in the same area for 3 days. A powerful 7.6 magnitude earthquake struck the same region in Davao City late on Saturday, followed by a 6.6 quake on Sunday. Saturday's quake triggered tsunami warnings across the Pacific region and sent residents fleeing along the east coast of Mindanao, evacuating a hospital and seeking higher ground. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology initially warned of a destructive tsunami after the first quake Saturday, expecting life-threatening waves, though none occurred and the warning later ended. Earthquakes are common in the Philippines, which lies on the Ring of Fire, a belt of volcanoes circling the Pacific Ocean that is prone to seismic activity. Another region that sits on the Ring of Fire was affected on Sunday. Indonesia's Merapi volcano in West Sumatra province erupted on Sunday, spewing volcanic ash as high as 3,000 meters into the air. According to the country's disaster management agency BNPB and other authorities, the 2,891-meter-high volcano erupted at 2:54 p.m. local time, and volcanic ash was dispersed at high intensity to nearby districts. Eyewitness footage showed clouds of ash hanging over Merapi Mountain, while cars, crops, and roads were covered with a thick layer of volcanic ash. According to Indonesia's volcanology agency, the country has 127 active volcanoes. Chung Eun-ju, Arirang News.
It is time to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. Joining us in the studio is our sports editor, Paul Need. Evening.
Hello there.
So let's start with football. One of K-League's most famous clubs suffered relegation over the weekend. What can you tell us?
Yes, Suwon Bluewings. They went into the last game of the season on Saturday, a relegation decider against Gangwon FC, knowing that only a win would guarantee safety from automatic relegation. But they drew 0-0, and with Suwon FC drawing 1-1 with JG United, this meant that the Bluewings were relegated for the first time in their 28-year history. The fans, of course, were shocked and devastated. The Bluewings will be seen as one of, if not the most successful Korean clubs to suffer relegation. They've won the league 4 times, the FA Cup 5 times, and what's now called the Asian Champions League on 2 occasions, among other major honours. Meanwhile, at the other end of the table, Ulsan Hyundai on Sunday were presented with the K-League trophy. Ulsan had won the league at the end of October, but had to wait until the final day to actually lift the trophy. They capped off the season with a 1-0 win over Jeonbuk to finish 12 points clear of Pohang. It was Ulsan's second title in as many years, having also won it last season, their first in 17 years. Manager Hong Myung-bo said the players and the fans did it together.
And pulsing with K-League, attendance figures shot through the roof this year.
They really did, yes. Just over 3 million paying fans attended the games this year. In the league's 40th anniversary year too, no less, the K-League announced on Sunday that with 2.44 million fans in K-League 1 and around 560,000 in K-League 2, the 3 million mark had been surpassed for the first time. This is a record since only paying punters were counted in the official figures from 2018. Monday was the day of the K-League Awards, and in K-League 1, Kim Young-gwon won the MVP award, the Ulsan defender. His manager, Hong Myung-bo, won the Manager of the Year award, and Gwangju FC's Jung Ho-yeon won the Young Player of the Year award.
And over in England, an eventful game for Son Heung-min yesterday. Tell us more about that.
Yes, very eventful. A goal in each end and an assist for Son Heung-min. He and Tottenham Hotspur on Sunday drew 3-3 away to Manchester City. Son opened the scoring with just 6 minutes on the clock with a great solo effort on the counter-attack. But an unlucky own goal 3 minutes later made it 1-1. Man City then took the lead through Phil Foden with just over half an hour played, but Spurs drew level midway through the second half, Son laying the ball into the path of Giovanni Lo Celso, who found the bottom corner. Man City then took the lead again with Jack Grealish scoring on 81 minutes, but Spurs found a late equaliser with Dejan Kulusevski making sure the spoils were shared. Son was named as man of the match, and the draw ended Tottenham's run of 3 straight losses. Elsewhere in Europe, Paris Saint-Germain players had their names written in Korean on the backs of their shirts for their game this weekend. The club said the decision to have player names written in Hangul was in recognition of the growing number of Korean fans after signing Lee Gang-in. PSG beat Le Havre 2-0.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And finally, to Taekwondo, Lee Da-bin is heading to the Paris Olympics.
She definitely is, yeah. She won gold on Sunday in the World Taekwondo Federation's World Grand Prix final. She did so in Manchester, England, in the 67-kilogram category after the UK's Rebecca McGowan withdrew from the final due to a broken finger. Lee had beaten Althea Laurent of France 2-0 in the semis to essentially win the title overall. Laurent was ranked top beforehand while Lee was 5th, but is now going to move up to 3rd after her win in Manchester. The top 5 go through to qualify for the Olympics.
All right, thanks for the wrap-up, Paul. I know you're off next week. See you next time.
Thank you. See you.
Temperatures will rise this week as the 5 days of an Arctic cold wave recedes. The maximum temperatures in Seoul will stay in the positive range for the next couple of days. A huge temperature swing is expected. The number of people with the flu or a cold is increasing. It's important to dress warmly and take care of your health. Meanwhile, dry conditions are persisting across the East Coast. Please take extra precautions against fires as dry air coupled with gusty wind. Tomorrow, most regions will start off at single digits. Seoul 3 degrees, Gwangju 2 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, Seoul will get up to 12 degrees, Busan will be milder at 16 degrees. In the middle of the week, rain is expected nationwide. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for tonight. Thanks for watching. A panel session coming up.